A mai napon Anitával fogunk találkozni, aki itt a környéken megtörtént nagyon izgalmas bűncselekményekről ír történeteket, úgyhogy ő fog ma nekünk mesélni. Gyertek! Consider yourself a writer or someone who sheds light on true crimes around the area, or perhaps both?
Well, first of all, I think I'd call myself a writer. I didn't set out to be a true crime writer. I just wrote this story about what happened in Van Buren back in 1981 that put me in the genre of true crime. And so I became a true crime writer.
So what made you wanting to write about specifically about crimes?
Well, I always loved reading true crime, always. I had this story, this murder had happened in Van Buren, of a prominent family, and it was a big, huge thing that happened in Van Buren. Everybody thought her son had done it, and the police thought so, and they just harassed him, and it was just a great, big, huge story. And so I kept up with it because I had gone to high school here in Van Buren, and I'd gone to school with the children of the lady who was murdered. And I knew her as well. She was she was real smart, but she was a nut. And then she was murdered, and who did it? And everybody thought the son did. And I saved all these articles because I knew, man, this is a good story. And I told my husband, this is the book I'm gonna write. Well, 25 years later, I did.
What exactly was the crime? So how was the lady murdered?
Okay, well, first of all, she lived in this house across up on top of Logtown Hill. It was a beautiful house. They owned the Press Argus newspaper. She and her husband did, and they built this beautiful home. And then they divorced later, and she really became more of a nut after they divorced, and you could see why he didn't want to be married to her. But anyway, you can imagine when someone like that in Van Buren is murdered. Her son found her, and she was lying in a pool of blood. And this is something I always tell. This is a story I always tell when I'm speaking at a book club or at a conference or wherever. She did not have any panties on, and her gown was pulled up above her bare bottom. And I always tell people now, when you go to bed at night, ladies, you be sure to wear your panties, because if you happen to get murdered, and you wouldn't want to be lying there with your panties out.
Her son found her, right? Was the case already solved whenever you started writing about it, or did you have the police kind of solve the case?
I knew what had happened. I knew who killed Ruyan, but it had been so long since this had happened that I still wanted to treat it as a real mystery.
Did you ever find out why was the lady murdered?
Yes. I did find out, and that was all in the book, and I think that's important, to find out why, and then find out about the person who did it, Why did they do it? What was their background? You could see that the sheriff, the police, everybody, state police, they all thought that the son did it, and they didn't look anywhere else. I mean, they just thought the son did it. Now, the son was quite a character himself. He was gay. He went to law school, and he worked in the prosecuting attorney's office. He ended up getting fired. And so he came back to Van Buren and lived in one of those houses across the street from his mama and practiced law. You know, he didn't do very well because he had these outlandish parties. He would go down to the jail and pick up anybody who'd been picked up for vagrancy. He would bring them home and employ them to mow his yard, and he'd have sometimes 4 or 5 of these men living there and working there.
Do you know what was the motive behind having her murdered?
It was very surprising. She had an adopted daughter who lived in Cabot, Arkansas, and she had a key. So only 3 people had a key to get in that house. Linda was adopted.
Was the killer related to the mother, or was he or she someone completely different?
Well, as it turned out, it was the daughter. She was this little timid little girl, real timid, not cute. I can remember in Ruy Ann's room, she taught Arkansas history, I think, and in her classroom, she'd have all these pictures of her son, and there'd be none in there of Linda. I didn't even know when I was in high school who Linda was, who she was related to. She was not treated well. She met this guy. She ended up marrying him, and Ruy Ann did not want her to marry him at all. She thought he was just marrying so he could get into this prominent family in Van Buren. And he watched over her like a hawk. He was so mean to her. And he and his oldest son, and their oldest son, had gone on a Boy Scout camping trip. And a younger son had gone to spend the night with someone. So that left Linda and her 18-month-old little boy home by themselves. And she had found out that her husband was having an affair with somebody he got a divorce for. Linda said, I thought maybe if I drove up to see my mother, I just wanted her to hug me and say, everything's gonna be all right. And she said, I don't know why I thought she'd do that. And anyway, she said, I got there and I got there about 1 o'clock in the morning, and she was mad at me because I interrupted her sleep, and she had her little boy with her, and the little boy was asleep, and she put him down in the house on a little made-up little bed on a blanket turned over. Anyway, that little boy was there. Although in the book I wrote that the little boy was left in the car, and I did that for the sake of Linda, because she didn't know if that little boy, 18-month little boy, would remember anything. Anyway, Ruy Ann and Linda had this big argument, and Linda had picked up a gavel that had come off of a trophy that Sam Hugh had gotten when he left the prosecuting attorney's office. They gave him that plaque, and that gavel had fallen off, and it was in the guest room on top of a bureau. Anyway, Ruianne was sitting down on the bed, and Linda was over her, and she picked up that gavel, and she hit her mother on the top of the head 12 times. She told me she really didn't know why she did that, but she just went into a blind rage because her mother was saying, I told you not to marry him. Don't be coming and asking me for help. I told you, she just berated her. And Linda said, when I interviewed Linda,